Um, Now, I would like you to take this opportunity to share the broadcast, share the link with somebody out there or on your page as well. We would like you to do that for us so that such all important discussion will be heard by many. And then, of course, let me take this opportunity as well to let you know that for those of you in New Jersey, in the United States, this program is broadcast in live on King's Jersey Radio all the way in New Jersey, in the East Coast at the moment. So we are particularly grateful to the producers right there at King's Jersey Radio in New Jersey for the tremendous work that you're doing. It's also broadcasting live on Modern Ghana Radio, and then of course King's Jersey TV right here on Facebook. Many platforms are also hosting this edition of iTalks, and then of course the very many future editions that we'll be holding as well. I'm particularly grateful once again to have Mr. William Vanderpuye here to discuss with us developing children with autism. So I know that there's quite a lot that we're going to talk about, but let's start with the issue of how COVID pandemic here in the UK have been handled. What is your view on how um, of this has been?
The UK government has come under heavy criticism regarding its handling of the pandemic from the start to date. First of all, they should have implemented measures to stop the virus from spreading at the onset. But instead, there was a lot of, let's say, dilly-dallying from the government, so lots of false information going back and forth. And the lockdown, the first lockdown that happened in March, should have been instituted a lot earlier on, sooner, in order to save many lives. And we were instead told that masks were not effective enough and that they give us a false sense of hope. So many of us were not even putting on the masks, which means that the disease was even spreading even more than that. Only for them to have a U-turn months later and making masks mandatory. I believe, yeah.
But many people watching you might be asking questions like, it's just because they've taken decisions and measures that obviously have gotten us into this stage. That's why you were able to also take your stand, just behind what decisions they have taken, because it's not a situation that anybody would have thought of or maybe pre-planned for its coming. So, I mean, in the heat of the event, it's equally difficult to make decisions and then get them right. And of course, they've made some decisions and then got some right and got some wrong. We are here now.
Yeah, I believe I understand your point, but this is the situation where we are working with people's lives. People's lives are at stake, and it's not like it couldn't have been prevented. It could easily have been prevented, and I believe that the government messed up big time. Look at other nations. Look at France, for example. They put in so many measures right on time. We could have looked at them. We are an international community. We are not an island on its own. Okay, technically the UK is an island, but what I mean is that we are not working in isolation. We could have looked at other nations, what they're doing, and implemented those measures, which we didn't do. And I believe that disabled people in particular have been largely disadvantaged by this pandemic. And also, I'm convinced that the indecisiveness of the government has made it complicit in the deaths of so many people.
While you brought in the subject of disability, I would like to ask you, I mean, what in your view are some of the effects of school closures on SEN children? That you could mention for our viewers to, have an opportunity to see your opinion as well.
Okay, so what are some of the effects of school closures on children with SEN? With the closure of schools, many children with SEN, special educational needs and disabilities, have struggled with regards to the support measures that's been put in place for them, they've not been able to adequately access these measures. It could be the fact that they don't have that special teaching assistant or learning support assistant next to them breaking down the lesson. Instead, they've got their parents. Even though the parents know them very well, they've not been trained in that area. So they might lack the patience needed to break down the lesson for them. Also, many of the children with SEN have got this need for routines. So early in the morning, they know they wake up, they take the bus, they go to school, they sit down with their classmates. They don't have that anymore. So their routine has been broken, and this can have an adverse effect on their mental health. There's also a lot of isolation going on, and parents are also struggling to cope because aside from doing their own work at home, they also have to get into the routine of the school. And I've got children myself, and I know how difficult it is for the parents
How
to,
do practitioners, institutions,
yeah.
how do we reconcile this situation, helping, students of disability get back on track as what it was, in the traditional settings, if I should put it that way, because now things have changed quite drastically. So how do we bring them back?
It's going to be difficult, I would say. It's going to be very difficult because Ofsted has said that Ofsted is the regulatory body for education in the United Kingdom, and they've said that children have lost a lot of time, educational time, due to this COVID. And it's very difficult to bring them back. Some schools have instituted online learning where they can learn with the computer. Um, Others have homeworks at home. Others are being homeschooled, but all the same, it doesn't replace mainstream education. It's going to be quite difficult to get them back on track as we used to, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. We can always do our bit by homeschooling them, using the computer, using whatever is available to us at the moment. So that's not to say that we can never get back on track. We can, but it's going to be very difficult, I would say.
Gonna be very. You see, the psychotherapist, Dr. Julia Samuel, author of This Too Shall Pass, says that I think the mental health pandemic is now upon us. And then a survey that was done in August last year from the Office for the National Statistics found that almost 1 in 5 adults were likely to be experiencing some form of depression compared with 1 in 10 before the pandemic. I mean, before the pandemic, it was quite some issue that needed to be addressed. But now we are, if give and take, over a year dealing with the pandemic still, that is going to have a vast effect on our mental health, isn't it?
Definitely, because it's not just the fact of the virus getting to you and making you sick, but it's also lots of people's livelihoods that are at risk. People have got mortgages to pay, they're being laid off work, they can't go out and see their friends, they can't go out and see their families. Life is uncertain. Even look at how there was panic buying recently in all the shops because people just did not know how this was going to happen, how it was going to pan out, how it's going to end. So there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression in the system. I understand many suicides have taken place. Self-harm is rife in so many areas. And there's a lot of depression. Many people are on medication due to this pandemic. And yeah, it's not just a health issue. It's also a mental health issue that's been brought about by this pandemic.
So in dealing with this mental health, we're going forward in time, because we've seen it, the statistics tells us that this is the situation that we'll be dealing with right after the pandemic. And of course, you've also highlighted it from the challenges that special education and needs children are facing and will be facing going forward. What do you think should be done? I mean, what are some of the things that needs to be done to avert the situation? I mean, if you can put some points to help us prepare, or maybe some form of measures that needs to be done?
Um, First of all, I'm very happy that the government has instituted the permission to have at least one form of exercise a day during lockdown, because that's very vital for people's mental health. I believe a little bit more should be done with regards to mental health, like keeping services open and preventing cuts to mental health services. Um, I believe there should be more support out there for parents and for families of people with special educational needs and disabilities. In the past, we used to have stay and play sessions for families. We used to have library sessions and other things, but these days, because of the pandemic, all this has been cut short. So we need to have an alternative to that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Enoch Mesa, Emmanuel Agri, um, my own brother, Westside, wherever you are. I salute you. Thanks for taking the time watching us, and then we greet yourself and your family. We salute you all. It's been ages since we touched base on so many things, but thanks for watching the show right now. And then those of you that have taken the time to share, help us reach out to many people who would want to be educated on some of these, subjects that exist for us to know about. And now, I mean, as a practitioner, and I know you've worked with people or children of special needs, and doing so, you've done this for quite a number of years now. I
Yeah.
mean, what is it like working with children? What's the experience like working with children?
Well, first of all, I'll say that every child is different and no 2 days are the same. One day you might have a very calm day, the next day you might have a very noisy day all over the place, but it's still part of the work and it's quite rewarding. So what we do is that we normally give them one-on-one support, working with them, speaking with them, trying to develop their social skills, supporting their movements, their motor skills as well, planning activities to them to keep them engaged, planning activities for them to keep them entertained as well. And we also signpost parents to relevant organizations such as Chatterbox, which runs sessions to stimulate their children's communication skills. We advise teachers on strategies. We run training programs, and I also advise parents as well on strategies to use with their children to stimulate their communication. We talk about things like sign language, PECs, that's picture exchange communication system, where a child takes one picture and shows it to um, communicate their needs.
So while you've experienced some of these things, and you bring into bear some of the things you do
Mhm.
in terms of expectations, as
Yeah.
looking at it from the professional's view,
Mm.
what are some of the challenges that they should anticipate while dealing with children of special education needs? What are some of the challenges that they should have in their minds that they will be facing, so that when they start seeing them, they're not going to be put off or maybe be a little bit perturbed by the very development processes that the kids are going in?
Okay, as I said earlier on, all the children are different, so there's no one size fits all strategies for everyone. Some children might respond to one method, another child might react negatively to that method. So it's quite open. We need to have an open mind when putting in these support measures. One of the things that we find challenging would be the understanding of the condition by the parents. For example, when we come to the Black and minority ethnic parents, for example, they might have different views of the um, condition. For example, they might believe that it is caused by demons, it's caused by witchcraft or something else like that. Or they might even be ashamed of it. There might be a stigma attached to it that comes from the cultural background of the person. So they might want to hide it. One other challenge I've noticed is that many parents, or some parents, I would say, I won't say many, parents do not want their children to be assessed and diagnosed with a condition. Why? Because they are afraid of the repercussions of the stigma, and they feel that if they get the diagnosis, they're going to be labeled for the rest of their lives. But in order for me to dispel that myth, I need to make them understand that the diagnosis is not there to pull the child down, but it's rather there to support the child to develop to the next level.
mm,
And it's more of a friend than enemy. So it's
oh,
something that they must embrace. It's part of the child's identity.
right, right. That's a little, that's very interesting about the issue of the cultural background of some parents, and then the the kind of challenge that that poses on how they view some of these challenges that the kids go through. Let's talk a little bit about autism. Let's talk about autism, trying to narrow it down to one of the educational needs in the area of autism, which obviously you are quite endowed in your experience to talk about it as well. What is it?
Autism is a neurological condition that affects the way a person interacts with their environment or sees the world. It was first brought to light. Okay, first of all, let me break down the word autism. Autism comes from the Greek word autos, which means self.
Mm,
That's why people normally describe autistic people as he's into himself or he's locked up into himself. Um, but as we go on, we will learn that autism is not just about one person locked up in himself, but it's about seeing the world through a different set of lens. Now, autism was first brought to light by Leo Kanner, who is an American pediatrician. He wrongly attributed autism to a lack of maternal instincts by attributing the condition to refrigerator mothers. So the mothers were not warm enough. That's why the child has turned out to be that way. But recent research shows that no, um, autism is in vitro. It happens at conception. It's something you are born with, and it's not something that you can be healed of because it is not a disease. It is part of you. It's part of your identity. It's a neurotype. Just like we've got different ethnicities, we've got different skin colors, we've got tall people, short people, blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes. We also have different types of neurotypes, and autism is one of them.
mm. So in terms of bringing it down to uh, the spectrum disorders, how is it the types you're talking about now?
Um, let's see. First of all, I would say that autism is an umbrella term that it overshadows a lot of different conditions. That's why we
Right,
call it a spectrum disorder. So
right,
I might have an aspect of it, you might have a different aspect of it. There are some things I can do that you cannot do. There are some things you can do that I can't do. So we can't use one size to fit everyone.
right.
People wrongly think that the autism spectrum is a line. So we've
Mm,
got less autistic and more autistic, but it's not so. Recently, research has shown that it's more of a circle.
mm,
Yeah, it's more like a graph in a circular way, where some people have got more of the ability to speak, others have got more of the ability to plan and strategize, and so many different things. We've got some strengths and we've got some weaknesses in autism.
right.
Yeah. Now there are lots of different um, aspects to autism, and people normally call them the autism spectrum disorders. Personally, I call them autism spectrum conditions because I don't believe it is a disorder.
Right,
Yeah, I believe it's a condition, not a disorder.
right.
Yeah. And now, so the autism spectrum disorder or conditions is an umbrella term to describe a list of neurological conditions with similar traits that affects a person and the way they interact with the world.
Mm, mm,
Now, there's this book called the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health conditions. Now, the
Right.
fourth edition listed Asperger's syndrome, Rett syndrome, pervasive developmental disorder, childhood degenerative disorder, and pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, or PDD-NOS. So these are some of the examples of autisms that we've got.
So how can you tell? Let's take autism from the Asperger's syndrome.
Okay.
How can you tell?
All right. Asperger's is a different aspect of autism. It was discovered in 1944 by Hans Asperger, an Austrian psychologist. Now, he also wrongly termed it as a type of psychopathy. He called it childhood autistic psychopathy. So he believed that they were sort of psychopaths. But it's quite interesting because Hans Asperger himself was autistic. Yes, and in his research, he gathered children who were just like him. Now, one of the things that makes Asperger syndrome stand out from other autistic conditions is that Asperger syndrome does not come with a language delay.
Right.
Yeah, so someone with Asperger's will be able to speak normally like the way you and I speak. It's hard for you to know that, oh, this person has got a condition. However, they tend to be more focused on special interests. So they might be very much interest, or they become experts in an area of their interest. It could be trains, it could be washing machines, it could be the solar system, the royal family, it could be batteries, it could be anything. But they become very much focused, and they will know everything about that special interest. So that's one of the traits of Asperger's syndrome. Now, it's worth noting that yeah.
I was going to take you back a little bit.
Okay.
When you mentioned that the condition is from inception, is that right?
Yes, it is.
And we know a little bit that inception um,
Mhm.
starts when the sperm fertilize the egg. So,
Yes.
in what condition, or in what situation, or should I say, what is actually the whose fault is it? If I should put it that way, is there somebody that needs to be blamed from the father or mother, or I mean, is it just something that somebody did?
Okay, let me ask you a question. If a child is born, if a man and a woman meet, and coitus takes place, and a pregnancy is like there's a pregnancy,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, whose fault is it? Who is to blame?
Well, it would be, I think, the man, isn't it?
Will it be the man? I think it's going to be both of them,
Well, it's
because
going
it
to be
takes
both of them,
the
but
sperm and the
I
egg
mean,
to
yeah.
meet.
Well, obviously, yeah, you got me right there because
Yeah.
yeah, you got me. Yeah.
I believe that, or it is believed that autism is genetic. Yes. So when one child is diagnosed with autism, their siblings are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism as well.
Mm.
So there's a likelihood of you getting another child who is autistic as well. And not only that, but people whose children have been diagnosed, have gone on to receive a diagnosis for themselves as adults.
Mm. Right.
Yeah. So it's either from the mom, from the dad, or from both of them. But it's also some people might fall through the net and might not be diagnosed as autism, diagnosed with as autistic from childhood, because during the time when they were children, research had not advanced to the extent that it is today. So we don't know, they didn't know much about autism by then. And also, they might have another form of autism which wasn't immediately visible. For example, Asperger's syndrome, as we spoke about, is quite difficult to know that someone is autistic by just looking at them. Yeah, so it takes an assessment by a qualified clinician or psychologist, psychiatrist to determine whether the person has got autism or not.
While you've looked at the Asperger's syndrome, let's talk a little bit about the pervasive developmental disorder. What is that?
Pervasive developmental disorder, PDD, is a form of autism that it's normally, wait, let me get my thoughts right. Oh yeah, wait, hang on. Oh yeah, we're talking about pervasive developmental disorder. Yeah, it's another form of autism. As I said earlier on, it's it was noted in one of the diagnostic manuals, DSM number 4, that there were 5 or so forms of autism, and PDD was one of them. But these days it's been struck out because it's an antiquated term. We don't use that term anymore. Right. Yeah, so now it's just called autism spectrum disorders. We actually don't even use Asperger's anymore, any longer. We just call it autism. Yeah.
Have you watched Mercury Rising, the movie by Bruce Willis?
No, I've not watched that one. I've not watched that one, but I'll make a note of it.
Yeah. If you had, I was going to ask you a
could you tell
question
me about it, please?
It was a little boy who managed to decode, more or less like was like, I don't know, it was like a code hidden in some form of a puzzle.
Okay.
And then the little boy who was special educational needs child, I think in the area of autism. He was autistic, and then he managed to decode it because the persons that put the code in the eventually he was able to decode it. I think part of the decoding process was, if you manage to do it, then obviously you need that a number is going to, come up on your screen, the computer screen, and then you call the number, and then there is going to be a reward, and the reward was very, very was very huge. So the persons was a bit surprised that somebody managed to decode it, so they wanted to find the boy and kill him. Sorry, but then that was where Bruce Willis came in to do his the baby. So, but it's very interesting because I really love that movie.
Okay.
Very, very nice. I learned quite a lot from it. Yeah, but in this current lockdown, we'll come to the other syndromes in a minute. But in this current lockdown, where we've switched to remote learning, and then many students learn from home and stuff like that. I've actually brought in the issue of somebody looking through the screen and stuff like that. Personally, for me, if I stay on the screen for long, I feel a little bit, wheeziness and stuff like that. So I just have to go out there, get some fresh air, or maybe get some sunlight or something. But how is that, difficulty like for special educational needs kids? If you bring into kids with ADHD and all them, or if you can take them out, is there going to be that kind of effect on them?
Well, in everything there are positives and negatives, I would say. With the computer, I would say it's a bit like taking a kid to a candy shop. There are so many options for them to play with. They might even get distracted because you've got the whole internet in front of them. What shows that they're actually accessing the lesson. They might be browsing the internet for all you know. They might chance upon things that they should not even be looking at. Also, some children have got what we call sensory issues, sensory sensitivities. Staring at the screen for a long time could cause some of such sensitivities. Also, some children might even find it as a positive looking at the screen because they are not being distracted by all their classmates around. So differs from individual to individual, I would say.
Mm, mm, Great. So obviously we should keep that in mind in exposing our children to that ray of light for quite a long time, because obviously some kids can respond to that. Is that what you say?
Yes, but also some children are very good with computers, especially those with the autistic children. If
Mm,
you go to places like Silicon Valley, you find out
right,
that there are many autistic people who work for the high computer firms
right.
because they have this aptitude for ICT. They are very good at working by themselves, working alone, working at the codes. So, with regards to learning through the computer, I think it's good for some of them, for some
Okay.
of the children on the autistic spectrum.
Okay. So is
Yeah,
that a clue right there for parents who obviously might be wondering the effect that these have on their children, and of course the stigmatization, as you mentioned. I mean that kids of that nature like IT stuff, and that it could be a strength for them to look into developing their potentials in the working world.
yeah, I would say that as a parent, you should know your child, look at their special interests, especially those on the autistic spectrum. Look at their special interests. What are they interested in? Are they interested in computers, mobile phones? Are they interested in trains? What are they interested in? Look at their interests and help them to focus on it, because that could be the key or a clue to their future success. Yeah, and also coming back to Mercury rising.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to touch on the kind of misconceptions in the media.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, would you want us to talk about that, or would you want us to talk
Well, no,
about
no. I
another one?
mean, if there are misconceptions that you want to address, I'm more than happy for you to do that. And
Okay,
the floor is yours, sir.
yeah, autism has been portrayed in the media for a long time now, and some of the portrayals are not exactly as accurate as they should be. For
Okay.
example, Rain Man. It's one of the movies with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman, which portrays an autistic servant, someone who is very good with numbers, who can count a number of toothpicks that are just thrown on the floor at random, and other things like that. If you look at it, you have the misconception that all autistic people are the same, are just like
Mm,
that, but it's not so. Not every autistic person is like that. There's also the Big Bang Theory with one character called Sheldon, who is socially um, awkward and who doesn't understand so many things, but he's quite brainy. Of course, people on the spectrum can be quite brainy, but it's not everyone who acts like Sheldon. Um, it's worthwhile for us to go through some of the traits of autism. I don't call them symptoms, I call them traits because that's what they actually are. Symptoms is normally for diseases, but traits are for
Yeah,
conditions.
I was since you've titled that, because I wanted us to talk about the other type of syndrome, which was the Rett syndrome. But since you brought about the traits, let's look at the characteristics traits of autism.
Okay, for a person to be diagnosed as autistic, they need to have three, what we call the triad of impairments. So there are three deficits, three things they struggle with. First one is social interaction, making friends, dealing with people. Second one is social communication, knowing when to say what, and knowing the signs, the body language, and other things. Third one is social imagination. Social imagination has got to do with I'm trying to remember the word obsessions, obsessive acts, obsessive acts, in other words, yeah. So these are the main three issues that people on the spectrum deal with. On
Let me
you
before
mentioned,
before you go on, let
yeah,
me quickly take a short break, and
okay,
then I will come back for us to delve into the prognosis and then the childhood disintegrative disorder. We talk
Okay.
about if there are other diseases that are symptoms of, or would show symptoms of autism, or the traits of autism, if I should put it that way. And then we talk about
Okay.
how we could develop, children with autism,
Mm.
that we've known about it really. So I wouldn't take I'll just be right back with it. Just stick and stay right there. Share the link for us, and then we'll be more than happy for you to do so. And then just be right back shortly.
Okay.
Right. So we are right back. If you've just joined us, this is the inspirational talk show, iTalks, and I'm your host, Bernard Asson. And my guest for this evening is Mr. William Vanderpuye, who is an early years teacher and a specialist teacher such in areas of special needs, and then especially with autism as well. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us tonight. And then also
Mm.
for you who is watching and sharing our broadcast. Enoch says, thank you very much for the good work. Well done. And then clap friend from Abina Achiampong. Thank you very much, ma'am, for coming on iTalks somewhere last year. And we so much would extend an invitation for you to come again, for us to delve into other matters. Gifty Lily Man says autism is a broad spectrum. And Ikuya Edwin says, "People, um, and good work again. Well done to the team here." And I talks. Messi says military code. I don't know whether you get that. Do you get it? That somebody says military code. Does that resonate with
Mm.
you?
No, I don't think so. Maybe later on
Okay.
it might.
From Messi. Messi says military code. Well, I don't. Maybe it's some. He's trying to say something. And fantastic insight from Gifty. Well done, Will. So Gifty is expressing profound gratitude for the insight you sharing here on iTalks. We are particularly grateful, sir, to have you. Now, childhood disintegrative disorders. What's that?
Childhood disintegrative disorder is a form of autism that happens later in childhood, around the age of 3. And if you notice, it coincides with the childhood immunizations.
Yeah.
So many parents would come and say that, as soon as my child had this vaccine, he's now ceased to speak. He can't do the things he used to do anymore. This has caused autism to be wrongly attributed to vaccines, but that's not so. What they actually experiencing is this form of autism. You see that the child will be crawling nicely, will be speaking, saying all sorts of things, developing normally, and all of a sudden, at the age of 3, they'll stop speaking.
Mm.
That's the form of autism that's kicking in, and it's got nothing absolutely to do with vaccines.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
So I
and
just
and
want to put
and
that.
in so speaking,
Mhm.
are there other diseases that have the same symptoms as autism?
Yeah, as I said earlier on, autism is not a disease. It's just a condition.
Right.
Yeah. Autism might have a crossover with other different conditions, such as ADHD. Some people are wrongly diagnosed with ADHD, whereas they are autistic, and vice versa. Some people might
And
have,
and and can you bring a little bit clarity to the ADHD? As it
oh,
what is it?
ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Right.
It's a condition where the person might find it difficult to focus on one thing because their brain is wired completely differently. So they are stimulated by things that are not normally very stimulating. They might get distracted by little sounds that are happening outside or lights or anything, and it might cause their behavior to be a bit different from that of their neurotypical peers. That's like everyone else. So that's what ADHD is all about. Now, that doesn't mean that the child is not intelligent. People with ADHD are normally very, very intelligent, but they might underachieve in class if support measures are not put in place to help them out. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah, as I said, there are lots of different. There might be
So
conditions that
so
cross
so
over. Mhm.
do autistic children commonly suffer from other illnesses, even though they are in that condition? Is it, you know, that they suffer from other illnesses as well?
Okay, there's what we call comorbid conditions. That are conditions that run concurrently with another condition. Now, there are so many conditions which are comorbid to autism. ADHD is one of them. That's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We've got ADD, deficit disorder. I don't know why I'm saying deposit. We've got different kinds of mental health issues. We've got depression. We've got anxiety. And these normally occur when adequate support is not put in place for the autistic person. We've also got dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dyspraxia. Dyslexia is difficulty reading. Dyscalculia is difficulty working with numbers. Dyspraxia is difficulty with the movements, motor skills, and coordination. We've got dysgraphia, which is the inability to write clearly due to coordination in the hands. We've got other conditions like epilepsy. We've got people on the autistic spectrum who are also epileptic. We've got another form of autism called pathological demand avoidance. And this type of autism might, if you don't understand it, you think that a child is just being naughty because they just don't seem to want to listen at all. They would just want to do their own thing. But it's not because they're being naughty, but that's how the condition causes them to be. So this in a nutshell are some of the things that occur with autism.
So as a specialist, and this is going to be something that I think a lot of parents are waiting for. Yeah.
Mm.
And how then do we develop, you know, children, who are gifts from God, and
Mm.
then unfortunately find themselves in this predicament, also put it that way, or in this situation or condition? And then, of course, to many people out there who might not have the science that backs that kind of understanding that such condition exists, and they are looking at it from various perspectives. But then the children are in the condition anyway, and we need to develop them. So how do we develop children with autism?
Um, First of all, I will start by saying that the child is not broken. The child is not defective. Your child is who they are. That's how they are born. You cannot separate autism from the individual. The only way you can separate autism from the individual is by doing a brain transplant, which is virtually impossible. It is part of them. So the first thing you need to do is to accept your child. There's a lot of talk going on about autism acceptance and autism awareness. I believe the awareness is not enough, but acceptance is what needs to be put in place right now. You need to accept the child for who he is or who she is. Once you've accepted the child, then you are in a position to actually support the child's development. Now, the next thing we need to do is to listen to the child, because the child is an individual. He might not seem to be self-aware, but they are aware of themselves. Everything you say to that child, they will understand it. Everything you say to that child, they remember it. Autistic people have got a very sharp memory, a very good long-term memory. So they remember a lot of things. And the fact that they might not all speak doesn't mean they cannot communicate. The fact that they do not speak doesn't mean they are not intelligent, because intelligence is not limited to just verbal speech. Communication is not limited to verbal speech, but there are other ways you can communicate with them, through sign language, through computer technology, through pictures, exchange program, so many things that can be done to help the child to communicate. And I've heard that in some societies in Africa, children on the spectrum are chained like dogs at one place. Now that's a detrimental method. It doesn't work and it's abused. Because imagine you being chained for 24 hours, 7 days a week. The way you feel is the way the child will feel. The way you feel is no different from the way the child feels. So you just have to know the child first. What are they interested in? And just develop it with them. Grow up with the child. Children with autism, or autistic children, I like to say autistic rather than with autism, because you cannot separate autism from the child. So autistic children do not come with manuals. It's up to us, the parents, to grow up with them, to learn with them and develop with them. Don't be discouraged by what society says, what people say. Don't be ashamed of them, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. There shouldn't be a stigma for autism. It's part of life. That's how they were created. That's how God created them, for a reason. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpuye, for this incisive opinions and knowledge that you've come to share with us here at iTalks. I'm particularly grateful. And then, of course, I believe that the viewers and everybody who have listened to you is also insightful from what you have shared with us today. And I believe that there will be more opportunities for us to host you here on iTalks. And then we look forward to working with you in that regards. Thank you very much for your time. So, what are your final words, Michelle?
My final words are that you should believe in your child. The fact that they are not speaking, or the fact that they've been diagnosed, doesn't mean it's the end of the world. They can develop, they've got their whole lives ahead of them. I know a person who has a degree in pharmacology. This person doesn't speak, she's nonverbal.
Wow.
Yes. And also, I'm going to tell you something that will shock you. I have got a degree in French and political science. I've got a degree in a master's degree in early childhood studies, and I'm now contemplating on doing a PhD very soon. I've got 3 children. I'm married. I'm working as an early years professional. I'm also a director of a company called Autistic Inclusive Meets. I'm planning my first book soon. But what is going to shock you is that I am autistic. Yes, I am
Wow. I
autistic.
actually didn't gather that at all.
That's what I was
You know,
saying.
mm,
It's difficult for you to know
mm,
that the person is autistic just by looking at them.
mm. But I would
Yeah.
like to take you on that, bit of, your book as well, because um, we obviously are in partnership and connected to Equip House Publishing company, which is
Oh,
one of the partners of iTalks, and we believe strongly that whenever you're ready, at which whatever stage you are, just reach out, and then we're more than happy to host you with a publication and other bits as well. So
wow.
yeah, just to put it out there right now, I've taken that contract off you now. So,
Okay.
oh, nobody else will come and then make any kind of further contributions. But we are particularly grateful to have you, sir. And
Thank you very
thank
much.
you
It's
so
been a
much.
pleasure.
Yep, have a blissful week, sir.
And you. Thank you very
Thank you so
much.
much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Right. So that was Mr. William Vanderpuye, an early years teacher. Of course, you heard from yourself. He's also an autistic professional and had managed to develop himself up until this stage of his life and looking forward to do quite incredible stuff in the future. So we've brought to you measures or approaches that you could use to help develop your child or any children that you are connected to that is autistic in their condition, and then of course we'll be able to help them also achieve their very positive potential. This broadcast or this um, aspect or issue of iTalks was broadcasted right on King's Jersey Radio in New Jersey, and it was also live on Modern Ghana Radio, and then of course King's Jersey TV also sharing that with us. Well, we are particularly grateful to come your way today, and then we believe that next week we'll have an opportunity to bring to you something very interesting as well. Without taking much of your time, thank you so much for your time. And then I wish you a blissful week, and then hopefully I will be able to catch up with you next Sunday at 9 p.m. God bless you.